We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. It's our DFS first look for NFL Week 5. Make sure you stick around till the end because we are going to be building a lineup live on stream. But before we get there, I want to make sure you guys are going over to FanDuel.com/Holka and joining the Listener League. It's a $5 3-max contest, completely rake-free. I say it all the time, but it's the best contest in all of DFS, so make sure you guys get in there before it fills. That link does support the channel, especially if you're a first-time player. Maybe it's just been a while since you played over on FanDuel, so thank you for that. And I know we said we before because I definitely have to bring in a guest that we didn't have last week because he was battling some pretty hardcore sick days, and now he's got food poisoning. But Ryan Hodge, man, welcome back, man. I'm glad to see you in one piece. I'm happy to be able to walk through the slate with you again. It was lonely last week, man. How you feeling?
Yeah, sorry, dude. I left you hanging. You had to take a look at those salaries by yourself.
You
But
need to, number one, you gotta stop saying sorry because that is completely against it's okay. We're not curing cancer here. It's all good.
but I'm good, man. It was a good week 4. Booked a small loss, so you always take the small ones rather than the big ones. And we're on to week 5, man. We are on to week 5.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: what's worse, booking a small loss, or like me? I had like a really amazing afternoon, booked like a pretty significant win, and then I punted off a bunch of it on Sunday Night Football. Like, what's worse?
Uh, I would I would say what you did is
Yeah, it is,
worse.
right? Because like this
Yeah.
is such a great day. I could have just went to so obviously it was at the Patriots game. I could have just went, enjoyed it, had a couple beers, and just relaxed, just like sit there, just after a great afternoon. But no, I just decided to fire off a bunch of money on the single game slate, and then Tom Brady goes out there and doesn't score, like throw for one touchdown, and just completely ruins my entire day. It could have been a great day. So I don't know, man. That feels worse for sure. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but how do you not build when you're at the game, right? I mean, I always have the most action when I'm at an event, like straight
Yeah,
up.
you
I
have to do
so
it. Yeah, I mean, and just like there's no way you can't just put Tom Brady in every MVP slot that you have. Obviously, literally the entire slate, I think would have been close to break even if Antonio Brown comes down with that one catch in the end zone and,
yeah,
and he scores
yeah.
I guess he do one touchdown from Tom Brady in the return to Foxborough, and my life is great. So, anyways, I had to get that out since I haven't really been able to talk through any of that stuff yet. But like you said, on to week 5. We're going to go through each position per usual. We're going to build kind of a first look type of team at the very end. And we'll get you off, man. We're going to ease you back into it this week since you're getting back being over sick and whatnot. So we actually, since we're recording this a day later than we normally do, we actually get to look at some of the sims along the way over at Run the Sims. We can kind of get an idea of kind of the early optimals, but also guess kind of where pricing's at. So I'll keep touching on that as we go through. But let's start with the quarterback position, and we'll move over just quickly to the pricing. Per usual, like I said, the Listener League right in here. Only 59 people in it so far. $2,000 to first place. $5 3 max. Look at all these people in the chat right now jumping in here. Love to see it. So get in there before it fills. Kyler Murray, 8,500 against San Francisco. We have Tom Brady back on the main slate. Tom Brady, you're dead to me. Dak Prescott, 8,100. Jalen Hurts, 8,100. They finally moved up Jalen Hurts is my first, I guess, takeaway of this
Yeah.
like top end stuff. But at the very top end was there, I guess there's not as many. We don't have Lamar on the slate. We don't have Patrick Mahomes on the slate. So I guess what are we
Right.
doing at the top end here?
Yeah, that
Interesting.
was actually the first thing that I noticed when I brought this up before I hopped on the show was, oh wow, we're missing a handful of elite quarterbacks, and even
Mhm.
a guy like Justin Herbert, I think is going to have a pretty tough matchup in Cleveland, right? And then you've
Yep.
got um, Jalen, who's now been priced up, and it's not that Carolina hasn't been super friendly. It's kind of been pretty neutral. If anything, it's been a little tough for opposing teams' quarterbacks. So you really are just looking at this matchup and you're just like, "Oh, I guess I just play Dak and Kyler and move on." Like I don't like that. That's kind of what it is to me for these guys who are priced up. There are guys who I like who are cheaper, but in the top tier of things, it really does immediately stand out as like a Dak and a Kyler type of a slate.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of Dak, sounds like you're not that scary that they went super run heavy last week. Do you feel like that was just kind of like a one-off situation for Dallas? Because I guess the defense has been a little bit better than I expected. I'll say that, but
Mhm.
like seeing them skew so heavily towards the run last week was definitely something I didn't see coming. So maybe people have some recency bias there, but I don't doubt. I don't mind going back to Dak.
Yeah, look, I mean, they've paced up a decent amount. Like I'm fine with Dak, even though we saw a little bit of a red. Like I think the people who played Dak last week definitely ran hot on efficiency.
Mhm.
Like he was super, super efficient to get those touchdowns. But no, I'm not overly concerned about it. Not yet. There's still just a massive ceiling for Dak to always be looking to attack, especially on a slate where it's just like, okay, I mean maybe Rodgers at 8K too, but that one's might be a little bit tough to play with no rushing upside. Although I say that, and Dak has what, like one real rush attempt on the year,
Right.
So
Yeah.
and that's a much better matchup, I think, for Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think one of the things that like we should probably touch on, because it's going to shape the entire slate, is Jimmy Garoppolo going to play? Obviously, it looks like the injury wasn't quite as bad as initially thought, but we have to scroll $6,900 Trey Lance at Arizona. Like that's going to be probably one of the best plays on the slate at quarterback if we get Jimmy G out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say just from a pace play, but I will say Arizona's been a little tough to opposing teams' quarterbacks for
True.
sure. And that even if we just kind of X what Stafford and the Rams did, but like so last week on Saturday, I was having a conversation with another very high stakes player, and I told him I was on Arizona, and he said that he was off of Arizona in the Rams game due to the matchup. Now that's not I do think that there's a lot of validity to that, and it's something that I would be cautious of. But if the pace is going to be up, that's all I'm attacking is always going to be pace. I can get over matchups for sure. I think they're much more important for running backs than they are necessarily for a team and his quarterback and his pass catchers.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it because I didn't want to be the guy that was just going to victory lap my 4-0 Cardinals. But yeah, man, the defense it's looked great. So I'm with you. And Trey Lance, I guess, say what you want about like, can he come in and be like a Jalen Hurts type of player? He did not look very good in that game. But even on like, I guess his floor, still had 7 rush attempts for 41 yards on the ground and a half of football essentially. So definitely keep an eye on that as we go through. In terms of some of the other, I guess, pricing points here, I guess there's a couple other guys, but I'm with you. Like, if you're just even looking like point per dollar in some ways, it seems like Kyler, Dak, and then like a big
Yeah.
kind of teardrop from everyone else. So is there anyone else that kind of stood out pricing wise to you?
It honestly, it's kind of tough. Look, Sam Darnold at $7,600 versus at home versus Philly. Like, especially if they're continuing to give him some of those rushing attempts down at the 5 yard line, like
Mm-hmm.
that stuff looks absolutely amazing. And that target share is pretty condensed in Carolina. I know Robbie definitely had a much larger market share of targets this week than he has over the first 3 weeks. But it's very straightforward to just play Devonte Smith, DJ Moore, and Sam Darnold. And then if you're playing in smaller field stuff, it's just as easy to add Robbie Anderson to that. And you kind of forget the fact that he hasn't really shown up. But like you can onslaught, Sam Darnold as 2 pass catchers and bring it back with a Jalen Reagor or Devonte Smith very easily. Um, or in the bigger field stuff, you just play DJ Moore regardless of the ownership. I mean, the guy is absolutely smashing. So
Man, he's been so good. He's been so good. So one of the things that I want to keep doing as we progress through here at runthesims.com. If you go there, runthesims.com/Holka, you'll get 10% off by checking this out. But just the early sims, you basically said it, Hodge. Like if you scroll down, it takes a while, but Dak and Kyler like seems like far and away the optimal quarterbacks, at least at this point of the week. Both those guys popping in about 11% of the optimal lineups when these games are simulated 10,000 times. So you're back on with us, man. You're hitting the buttons here that we needed this early in the week. So that's all I got for quarterback, I think, for right now. So let's move on to the running back position. And Derrick Henry, 10-4. Now that he's catching passes, like he's just my best friend. I did fade him last week, but I need to stop doing that apparently. But I guess how much big dog did you have last week?
I had enough for it to not matter
Sure.
because I still booked a loss, but I did have enough. He was a guy who whatever. Here comes the most tout thing out of my mouth, but he was a guy who I wrote up on FantasyLabs as like a concise conviction, like just
Yep.
pay for him. It's a great spot, and I think this week though, not to like completely gloss over Henry, but like if Dalvin is going to come back to it, I want to play running backs against Detroit
Mm-hmm.
flat out. Like I don't care who it is. I couldn't tell you the last time I rostered David Montgomery other than last week in DFS. I mean, I don't think I've touched the guy in like 20 plus slates
Yep.
other than last week. Like give me running backs versus Detroit. So if Dalvin's going to come back and be 100%, I think he's just in an absolute smash spot and a little bit of a discount to Derrick Henry, who's now just shy of 10.5, which is very expensive.
Yeah, it might be, I guess, like really poor recency bias for me with Dalvin, but I guess have like weird PTSD from like, I don't think it was last year, it was like the year before, where we just never got Alvin Kamara at full strength the entire year because of that ankle injury. So like, I guess the Vikings have already shown that they're willing to just like take the foot off the pedal with Dalvin. Like Madison ended up out carrying Cook 10-9 in that game. Like Cook went in there and had a couple of catches, and I mean, it is an amazing spot if we get an idea that he's getting healthier. But these ankle injuries, man, it's just like one tweak and they're set back like a full week in rehab. Like it literally is that simple. So we'll keep an eye on that. I personally, I think I'll be on the fade train for that one. But if it kind of gets to a spot where later in the week, like everyone's nervous and he ends up being like a super low owned play, like we know that the ceiling is there if he is healthy, and sometimes the uncertainty coming off injuries is something that we want to be attacking. So we mentioned Dallas before and Dak. Zeke against the Giants at 8K. They moved Saquon's price all the way back up to 7,800. So both of these guys I think are super interesting. Do you have a preference on Zeke versus Saquon in this spot? They're basically the same price.
Yeah, so from an opportunity standpoint, I'll definitely take Saquon. I mean, like just as recent as last week, Tony Pollard stepped out at like the half-yard line, and Zeke does not have that touchdown, right? So like, the point that I'm trying to make is they really are rotating Tony and Zeke in and out, and I do think you are playing a little bit of touchdown lottery. If I had like gun to my head, had to pick one, I'm gonna take Elliott for the goal line touches because they've been using him in that role. But I'll play Saquon every time versus Elliott, just from an opportunity standpoint, and you're saving $200, and so his role is very clear and very defined.
You're on it again. 7,800 Saquon Barkley, currently in 17.5% of the optimal lineups early in the week. So interesting. I guess I kind of skipped right over Alvin Kamara, but currently 27% of the optimal lineups have Alvin Kamara in them. I guess that's a nice price point for Kamara at 8,600 if we're just looking at him versus Saquon. I think that is a nice little price discount you get with Saquon, but man, Kamara, even last week, like no one wants to go back to him after he basically had just got the most rush attempts he's ever been given in his entire career.
Right.
So we literally just saw this with Austin Eckler in a game where Austin Eckler didn't have any targets. The next game he had like 9. So like that could easily happen with Kamara, right?
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And the nice thing is that at least you're still getting opportunities out of Kamara, and it's not that they're just evaporating his receiving workload and not increasing his actual rushing touches itself. So you still are what you're paying for. You're still getting the opportunities, and those are things that you want. But the more and more that I continue to look at some of these salaries, the more and more I go, do I want to play Leonard Fournette even though Ronald Jones is still getting some work? And I think I definitely just skipped over like a full tier of like
that's fine.
Najee Harris and Chuba Hubbard and some of these guys. But like, I don't know. I'm just looking at Fournette in my model, and he definitely has a wonderful rating at $6,400 versus a team who has been carved up by running backs. And I'm not even talking about like Derrick Henry or Cook or Kamara. Like they've played some very, very low tier running backs and have been absolutely shredded by them.
Yeah, I had a nice little view of Leonard Fournette this past week. I didn't have any of him on the single game slate. I was basically all in on some of those wide receivers for Brady. But man, 20 attempts, 5 targets, like this type of volume, like it was like one of like the worst things that could have happened in that game. But going forward, he's 6,400. Like he's just probably too cheap, right? So I like that one a lot. Like even in that 6,400 range, like let's just take a peek of some guys that are around there, see if we prefer anyone a little bit more. But if we scroll down, 6,400, that's around guys like Damien Harris, Antonio Gibson, Chuba Hubbard. DeAndre Swift's a little bit more expensive, obviously. So I think the only guy out of all of those that I prefer is DeAndre Swift. So I'm in on that. Even if you go down a little bit further, I think I'd rather take a shot on Leonard Fournette. Like we could see a guy like Damian Williams like come in here and be the chalk at 5,800. But I don't know, man. We don't know if he's just going to come in and take all the work. Like we basically saw it last week that they're willing to kind of like give that Montgomery role up to more than one player. It is the 4 p.m. game for Damian Williams with 5,800. So I guess that's probably the decision. Pay all the way down for Damien or kind of get up to that next range with Fournette and with Swift. I think it's FanDuel has some like reasonable options in the mid range at running back, especially when we don't have like these super elite guys at the top, no CMC, but interesting for sure. Like I rarely scroll down here and see guys that I like, but it seems like there's a bunch of guys in play at running back this week.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, and depending on the contest that you're playing in, you could very easily like. I'm a big. I want 3 wide receivers most of the, or a wide receiver in my flex most of the time. Sorry, and so most of the time, depending on the contest size. Now, there's one contest that I play in that's like 800 people, and I'm totally fine taking a third running back or running back in the flex. This could definitely be a week where like you play Damien Williams, you play Leonard Fournette, and then you kind of maybe pay up all the way for Derrick Henry. I mean, you're getting a pretty massive salary discount with those 2 running backs, where I think you can still stack one of those teams that we like Kyler, or maybe it's a little cheaper with Sam Darnold in order to get Derrick Henry.
I like that. So as we're moving over to the wide receiver position, one of the things that stood out to me right away when I was kind of looking at pricing, man, CeeDee Lamb is so cheap. And just looking at next gen stats, like I understand that last week was not great, but he still has a 33% market share of this team's air yards. So if we're going to sit there and say that Dak is going to be the chalk, like I think that it's a reasonable expectation that we could be going towards someone like CeeDee again, like going back to the well with that. What you're in on that?
Yeah, 100 probably with Dak. I don't know if I'm playing CeeDee by himself as like a one-off, maybe mini correlation there if you're like punting with Evan Ingram at tight end. I don't know. I'll have to go look at that pricing, but like, I don't. Yes, I mean $6,900 isn't bad. I think it honestly would just depend on what the rest of your lineup looks like. But to your point, the opportunity, the market share is all still there. I wouldn't worry about last week. The same way I said that I'm not worrying about it with Dak if I'm using Dak, right? So
Sure.
I still think that that's extremely well priced. And here's the other thing: if there's any news this week about Amari's hamstring, right, like tweaking it flaring back up, I think it's a totally different conversation at $6,900 then.
For sure. I kind of skipped over the top end, but that was the price that I guess that was glaring to me. But Devonte Adams at the top, 8,200. Like I said, no Tyreek Hill on this slate. So like there's a teardrop here. It's Devonte Adams at 8,200. Then we moving all the way down to DJ Moore and Justin Jefferson. So Deebo Samuel all the way up to 7,700. That's interesting. So there's a couple guys here. We got DeAndre Hopkins moved all the way down to 7,500. Terry McLaurin, 74. Jamar Chase all the way up to 7,300. So they've actually been pretty aggressive on moving some of these guys either one way or the other. So that's interesting. Odell Beckham misses a touchdown last week. He's 6,400 in a game that I think people are going to attack. And then we have just Brandon Cooks again against New England. He's 6,300. They never move Brandon Cooks' price. I guess if there is the narrative that they're just going to be able to shut him down, fine. But from an ownership or from a volume perspective, he stands out. Jacoby Myers is 5,900. Still think that they're going to try and like force feed him the ball a little bit if this game skews pass heavy at all. So those are kind of the ones that stand out to me. I guess, are we paying up for Devonte Adams against Cincinnati? Like they literally, I don't think have anyone that can stop him.
He's the number 1 rated player in my wide receiver model.
Yeah.
So, probably on the player rating topic too, CeeDee Lamb is 4th. So I hadn't filtered my player rating yet. So maybe I'm a little higher. Kudos to you there. Just understanding exactly what that price meant. So, what is interesting is some of these Jacksonville guys are standing out. And I think that might be because of my opponent plus minus rating in my model. I have a pretty high weight on for matchups. And so both of these Jacksonville wide receivers against Tennessee are both kind of, quote unquote popping here with Marvin Jones pretty high, as well as Laviska Shenault. And that is a little bit to do with salary, but a lot to do with their opponent plus minus. So just how friendly Tennessee has been to opposing teams' wide receivers.
Yeah, Visca's 5,800. So that's a really nice price point for him, especially if he's going to get different types of usage than we see from another guy. So getting those rush attempts is nice. I guess looking kind of at the Sims too, Devonte Adams is in 21% of the optimals right now this early in the week. Like there isn't a lot of wide receivers at the top here. Justin Jefferson at 8K is interesting. Deebo Samuel, even at that price point, still popping. Adam Thielen, DJ Moore, those type of guys. I don't see a lot of the cheaper ones, at least early, outside of CeeDee Lamb. So kind of an interesting wide receiver slate. But is there anyone else that kind of stands out at wide receiver. It's always so hard to talk through this position specifically when we don't have any ownership context yet. But is there any else at price wise that stands out to you?
Yeah, the only other guy, and I'll just say his market share and his opportunity has been pretty good, and they obviously were a little bit of a pumpkin on Monday Night Football. But Hunter Renfrow at $5,800 versus Chicago, who's been a little bit friendly towards opposing teams' wide receivers. I think I prefer Visca there, but like if you're looking to punt, for whatever reason, whatever reason you're doing some extremely expensive stack, I could see both of those players being wide receivers. I don't know how much of a ceiling I really give Hunter this week. It's probably like maybe 13 points on FanDuel, which is just such a low ceiling. And so Visca definitely has a little bit higher of a ceiling for me on a week to week basis. But he did stand out a little bit from a pricing standpoint and from his market share of opportunity.
Yeah, if you really want to get weird and just throw Damien Williams in there as like a little bit of a mini stack there, you can basically build whatever you want from there.
Yeah.
But good transition to tight end, Hodge, because talking through Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller at 7,400 against Chicago. This seems like a spot, especially if we don't have George Kittle in this one. It's another teardrop. I think that like some of these slates where we don't have Travis Kelce and we don't have Kansas City specifically, or we don't have Lamar, it feels like a spot that it's going to be really hard not to pay up for someone like Darren Waller. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree. I would be very surprised when I have a conversation. So I just, converse with a couple other players in the industry, and they play pretty heavily on FanDuel. And so I would be very surprised if some of those very first builds and those optimals don't have Darren Waller in their cash game lineup. It just really looks like a spot. This week, going over what we just did with quarterback, running back, and wide receiver and seeing where the value is, I'd be very surprised if it's not optimal to have Darren Waller in your FanDuel cash lineup. So he's definitely going to carry some ownership, but he has the highest ceiling, he has the highest median projection, he has the highest floor, he's got the highest projected plus minus. I mean, it's just like green all across my spreadsheet for him. So
Yeah, and on the Sims right now, he's the fifth, optimal rate on the slate. But the thing is, you have to scroll down a while before you find another tight end,
right,
and that's the thing that I think really matters with that. So I think that per usual, if I really wanted to a tight end, I'm going to try and get up to Waller. But if I'm not going to be getting all the way up there, I kind of want to pay down for one of these other guys. So I think that Jared Cook at 5,200, Tyler Conklin 5,100. Even if you wanted to go, like we just talk about how Devonte Adams is going to be popular, like even Robert Tonyan at 5,300. Like I don't see a reason to kind of live in the middle on this slate so far. But what are your thoughts on the rest of the tight end slate, some of those cheaper guys?
yeah, Tyler Conklin's actually a guy who I continue to go back to. He's seen like 6, 8, and 4 targets over his last 4 games or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's definitely a guy who's at least catching some opportunities and getting a little bit of work here. Noah Fant is a guy who I continue to play, especially with like Jerry Jeudy being ruled out. We'll have to see what their wide receiver situation looks like as well coming into week 5. But I just love to pay for talent.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a guy, talk about no Travis Kelce being on the slate. This is the guy who probably comps closest to Travis Kelce. I mean, from a pure like speed, catch radius, and things like that. Noah Fant is a guy who I continue to play. I hope his market share of opportunity starts to catch up a little bit though. But he did see 10 targets last week. It'll be interesting. I'll have to go look to see how many of those came from Locke and how many of those came from Bridgewater. But I know that Teddy targeted him, 4 or 5 times, and I honestly think Locke targeted him another 4 or 5 times. Like it might have been pretty close split. So at $5,900, tough matchup against Pittsburgh, but that pace just might be a little too slow for me to end up being on Fant. But he's just another guy who I always look to play.
Another guy popping in optimals, TJ Hawkinson. So if you haven't checked out the mystery unboxing this week, we're going to be giving away the TJ Hawkinson helmet. So that thing,
Nice.
One of our first jerseys of the year. So definitely check out that video, pristineauction.com. There's a link in the description if you want $10 off, free registration. But make sure you get into the giveaway if you're interested in the helmet. What else did we pull this week? We pulled a Deebo Samuel jersey. We pulled a CEH helmet. It's kind of like a matte Chiefs helmet. A bunch of cool stuff, man. So keep an eye out for that. Hodge, you ready to build the FanDuel lineup?
Yeah, man, definitely.
All right, let's do it.
Talk about timing on that Deebo jersey too.
Yeah, are you kidding? Like, so like they send me a bunch of boxes at once, and they all have like it says like week 5, week 7, so they're just
Right.
like piled up in my house. And literally the week 5 jersey, I pull out a Deebo Samuel. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Too good.
Yeah,
Pristine auction.
can you pull ahead and let me know who's in that? I feel like they got a little bit
Yeah,
of a
should I
clean
open
sheet
the week
going up
6 box and see who's in it? That'd be nice. All right, so building this team, obviously, I'm just going to throw it in the listener league for now. So make sure you guys get in there, fanduel.com/Holka, $5, 3 max tournament. You guys know the drill at this point. Rake free. Like if you're going to be playing any type of volume on FanDuel, definitely would do that. If you normally are playing specifically on DraftKings and you haven't been playing much on FanDuel at all, would appreciate it if you would go through my link to kind of continue that journey. We're going to continue to hammer FanDuel. I think there's a lot of opportunity over there. So Hodge, who's your first guy in at this point of the week?
I'm going to make us build around Kyler. I think it's a very, very clear teardrop at quarterback this week with Kyler. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to make us build around another teardrop with Darren Waller. So we're going to have to find some value here. But I just have a hard time not starting there this week, personally. I think if we wanted to mix in a mini stack just to give us some flexibility, like, do we feel pretty good about going down to Damien Williams at this point? Or do you think that it's chance that they kind of push that into a committee in Chicago?
Yeah, so two comments on that. I'm not sure. I think maybe a little bit more of a committee than what we would like. Also, the correlation between a running back and the opposing team's pass catcher, is that high enough for you to be like, this is a correlation that I want, versus, oh, this works because I like both of these players? And I like the pace. I just don't know if that's a game that's going to pace fast enough for us to want 2 players from. I don't know. I could be totally wrong on that. So that's more me asking a question for that mini correlation.
I probably admittedly do that more than most people. I know if you're trying to do a mini correlation, you prefer it be like 2 pass catchers, because if the game really shoots out, then at that point you would have both of those assets. But I do kind of like the idea if you have one team, if it's a very lopsided situation where you have someone like Darren Waller, you play in catch up on the other side, or if they get out ahead and Darren Waller's a big part of it, it's still a pass catching running back on the other side. So I don't think it really matters if it's like a game script independent type of running back. But I guess to your point, if we end up seeing a ton of ownership on Damien Williams, maybe it makes more sense just to have a different player from that game specifically and just have Darren Waller, even though he might have some ownership. So we can leave him out for now. Is there another like super standout value to you? Because we're going to need some as we're building this one, I think.
Fournette.
Okay.
I would play Leonard at $6,400 for one of our running backs, and then I'll do another one. I'll just go back to AJ Green. I think he's cheap on FanDuel too. And so that starts to get us there with our stack. So that should be enough value for us to open up our salary a little bit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, AJ Green on FanDuel specifically, like if he's just gonna be like a touchdown scorer throughout the year, he's never gonna be above 6K on FanDuel. They're just never gonna move him past there. So if we can't afford to get up to someone like Nuke, like having at least that correlation with AJ Green, so no issues with that. Is there anyone on the San Francisco side that you would want in that, or you just think we go skinny with Kyler?
Yeah, I mean, the San Francisco side is the only tough thing about the tournaments here. But I mean, how much is Brandon? I didn't even look. You know, I always call him by his first name because I'm gonna butcher his last name every time. He's cheap. Ayuk.
Okay.
And then Deebo.
Yeah, 5,300 for Ayuk. Yeah, Deebo is like way more expensive now, so there's a huge gap there in price now.
Yeah, so like I don't know, man. I'm a player who's typically willing to embrace a lot of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So I would be okay going back to Brandon and hope Trey Lance targets him more than he targets Deebo, which obviously was not the case last week, but you never know what can happen with a week of practice. And he's free. So now we can play like Henry, we can play Devonte Adams, we can kind of do whatever we want.
Yeah, I'm with you, because like we basically needed to get to a point. Now we're at 6,600 the rest of the way, so we could get in one of those guys. I think that Devonte Adams, just like you were talking about green across the board for, I can't remember who it was, but Devonte Adams is green everywhere for me in an 8,200 against Cincinnati. I think this is like, if everyone got on him last week and they're a little bit disappointed, like this is the week where he could just go crazy. And there's really not a lot of wide receivers on the slate that probably can match him outside of maybe Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, those guys, because we don't have Tyreek on the slate. Those guys. So I'm good on Adams unless you are, I guess, want to get in the big dog. I'm fine with either, actually.
No. Play Devonte. That works for me.
Okay. So at this point,
And
let's figure out some sort of cheap defense. Yeah. So at the bottom, we got Giants at Dallas. We got Detroit at Minnesota. We got Houston at New England. We got Tennessee, Jackson. So it's pretty gross down there. I guess one thing that was really popular in FanDuel last week at the higher stakes was just literally playing the Stone Min Jets defense. Yeah. So I don't know if I want to play the Giants at Dallas, but there's going to be some passing volume, I hope, on that side of it. Baker looked terrible last week in some ways, so maybe we go to the Chargers at 3,700. Is there another like cheaper defense like
Detroit? If we want to get close to Min, I don't know. Detroit against okay. Kirk Cousins. If they have to throw more, that would be the only reason. But like typically, I'm looking for more passing volume out of my defense, but it's a Stoneman defense, so. Yeah. Maybe Philly. I don't know. It's tough.
Let's just throw Detroit in for now, and if we want to upgrade, we can. But with 7,700 the rest of the way for one running back and a flex, so like honestly, like we can probably find another guy that's pretty expensive. We could go Saquon at 7,800. I think that would fit, yeah. And then that would give us 7,600. So that gets us to kind of an odd tier, I guess. Godwin, if we wanted to pair him with Fournette, probably wouldn't do that. Nuke, if we want to just add to our stack, we could fit that in, and then we kind of have that Thielen McLaurin tier. Thoughts?
Oh, we're just shy of DJ Moore, huh? I think he was 79.
79, yeah.
So that is a fun. Oh, we could just onslaught with Hopkins.
That's what I'm saying. I think we just toss Nuke in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That makes all the sense in the world. I don't know if I would do it in 2K. Actually, that's probably quite like a borderline in regards to like contest selection for full onslaughts. So I think it's fine for somebody who's in or this type of lineup in a 2,000 person field. But yeah, cool. No, that's great. I'm good with that.
I like it. Let me know in the comments, you guys, if you made it this far in the video, who your lock of the week is for week 5, or who do you think is going to be the most popular play on this slate. We'd love to hear from you guys. Toss a like on this video if you haven't already. Continue subscribing to the channel. Continue subscribing. I would love it if you would actually consider subscribing. And then, yes, please continue to subscribe. Please don't unsubscribe. I hope I didn't say anything too crazy. But Ryan Hodge, everyone, make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. He's at Ryan Hodge. Get in the Listener League, FanDuel.com/Holka.